Do you ever feel tired in a way that sleep or a weekend off can't fix? It's not just physical fatigue after a long day, nor merely mental strain from solving problems. It's something deeper, an emptiness that persists, a heavy exhaustion of the spirit. You might get a full night's sleep, eat well, even laugh with friends. Yet when you're alone in the quiet, that profound weariness returns. This isn't a trivial mood swing or laziness. It's the weight of existing in a world that often demands too much and gives too little in return. It's the feeling of constantly chasing something that never quite arrives. And when it does, it somehow loses its charm immediately. In short, you're not just tired, you are spiritually drained. This pervasive emptiness is more common than you might think, and it has an explanation rooted in philosophy. Over 150 years ago, the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer offered a bold insight. Human suffering is not a mistake or accident, it's our natural state. Schopenhauer's ideas can help explain why so many of us feel this existential fatigue, and more importantly, what we might do about it. Are you ready to examine the truth most people try to ignore? Let's delve into Schopenhauer's vision of life as will, and how understanding it can illuminate the cause of, and potential cure for, your spiritual exhaustion. The will, life's blind, insatiable engine. Imagine there is a force behind everything in nature and in you, a ceaseless drive that has no goal or direction, yet relentlessly pushes all living things. Schopenhauer called this force the will. According to him, the will is the inner essence of the world, a blind, irrational striving at the heart of all existence. It manifests in every aspect of life, from the instinctual processes of nature to our most complex human behaviors. Crucially, this will has no ultimate purpose or endpoint. It simply wants. It is an endless appetitive energy that has no goal or purpose, meaning it can never be finally satisfied. Schopenhauer argued that we humans are not the purely rational beings we like to think we are. Instead, our vaunted intellect and reason are mere tools in service of the will. In his words, the intellect is essentially a slave to the will, driven by subconscious desires and practical needs rather than pure reason. In other words, we are not rational beings who happen to desire, but desiring beings who happen to reason. Every moment of our lives, we are animated by urges for food, for love, for status, for change, that originate from this will long before any rational thought kicks in. As one commentator summarizes, we are desiring beings who strive to obtain things from the world, because behind every striving lies a painful sense of lack, and obtaining whatever we crave rarely brings lasting happiness. The will's influence explains why you can achieve a goal, and yet soon find yourself restless or yearning for something else. The will never knows peace. It only drives us to desire more and more, without any final fulfillment. The moment one desire is met, several new desires spring up to replace it. And if ever you did satisfy all your wants, Schopenhauer warns, you would not bask in endless contentment. You would simply fall into boredom, a new kind of misery. The will does not care about your lasting well-being or any higher meaning. It just keeps you in motion, perpetually longing and rarely content. In Schopenhauer's blunt view, life is structurally built for dissatisfaction. What you feel as deep exhaustion is the strain of being pulled by this internal engine of desire that never lets up. The pendulum of pain and boredom. One of Schopenhauer's most famous observations is that human life swings like a pendulum, endlessly back and forth between two states, want and boredom, or said differently, between pain and emptiness. When you desperately desire something, a promotion, a romantic partner, a new gadget, you experience the pain of lacking it. You feel anxiety, longing, and frustration until that desire is fulfilled. Finally, attaining the goal brings a burst of pleasure or relief. But how long does that satisfaction last? Often only a fleeting moment. As Schopenhauer noted, at no point do we arrive at a final, lasting satisfaction. The relief is temporary. Once the novelty wears off, we face a new problem: boredom. With nothing urgent to attain, life suddenly feels empty or dull, and we become painfully aware of the underlying void. This boredom itself becomes a form of suffering, a realization of the futility of existence when desire rests. And so a new desire soon arises to fill the void, swinging us back into restless striving again. In Schopenhauer's bleak imagery, existence is a cruel oscillation. Unmet desire produces misery. Met desire produces boredom, which in turn drives new desire. Life swings back and forth like a pendulum between pain and boredom, he wrote, with brief moments of satisfaction merely serving as the momentary midpoint of the swing. Think about times in your life when you pined for something, convinced you'd be happy if you got it, only to attain it and soon feel, is this all there is? The new car's shine fades, the dream job becomes routine. The accomplished goal leaves you oddly deflated once it's checked off. As Schopenhauer put it, often what we fervently hoped for ends up disappointing us, revealing how little desirable the desired object was once it's in hand. We are deluded now by hope, now by what was hoped for, continually finding that the imagined paradise turns out to be a mirage once reached. This endless seesaw between yearning and ennui is devastating to the human spirit. In fact, Schopenhauer regarded boredom as equally insidious as pain, because it exposes the underlying meaninglessness of our pursuits. He noted that animals, guided mostly by instinct and immediate needs, seem largely free of this particular affliction. But humans, with our capacity to reflect and imagine, suffer intensely from boredom once basic needs are met. Want and boredom are the twin poles of human life, he observed, each as unavoidable as the other. The pendulum never stops swinging as long as the will is in charge. Even when you are exhausted and want to rest, a gnawing restlessness or a new craving eventually pushes you back into the chase. This vicious cycle is the hidden source of that spiritual exhaustion that no amount of ordinary rest seems to cure. According to Schopenhauer, suffering isn't just frequent in life. It is baked into life's very structure, for existence is marked by insatiable striving, and therefore by perpetual dissatisfaction. The modern soul at war. If life was already an endless chase in Schopenhauer's 19th century, our 21st century world has poured fuel on that fire. Never in history has the will been so aggressively fed by external forces. We live in what feels like a giant factory of desire, a culture that bombards us with promises of happiness and incentives to want more at every turn. From advertisements and social media to societal expectations, we are prodded to continually seek the next big thing. We're told to optimize every hour, hustle harder, and never be satisfied with who we are or what we have. In such an environment, even a healthy person with a comfortable life can feel chronically unfulfilled. As you scroll through curated images of others' lives or endless product catalogs, you may unconsciously adopt dozens of new desires: a different body, a better job, a more exciting lifestyle, each one adding to the inner turmoil. Modern culture amplifies Schopenhauer's will into overdrive, leaving the modern soul in a quiet crisis of never enough. Consider how we often live on autopilot. You wake up and immediately check messages, rush through obligations, chase goals at work, consume entertainment to unwind, then repeat tomorrow. Society celebrates this hyper-productive, always striving lifestyle. Taking a rest or slowing down is often stigmatized as laziness, so we push ourselves to exhaustion in the name of success or progress. Yet even when you hit those milestones, the promotion, the award, the purchase, the feeling of fulfillment is disturbingly fleeting. Almost as soon as you grasp the prize, boredom swoops down like a bird of prey to remind you that you're still not content. In today's achievement-obsessed culture, many find that burnout becomes a constant state. We are ever tired, not because we're doing life wrong, but because we're doing exactly what the system drives us to do, and it's an unwinnable game. Schopenhauer's framework helps make sense of this. All our frantic pursuits, career advancement, consumer purchases, social status, are ordinary pursuits of mankind, oriented toward satisfying the will's demands, yet they are ultimately fruitless and illusory, since the will by nature cannot be satisfied. The more we achieve or acquire, the more the goalposts move. Modern society, with its constant stimuli and comparisons, magnifies our sense of lacking and fuels new cravings at a relentless pace. We end up, as Schopenhauer put it, like hungry beings who accidentally gained intelligence, using that intelligence not to find peace, but to scheme for the next desire. Little wonder that so many people, even those who seem to have it all, feel an inner void. As one Schopenhauer commentator observed, when our basic needs are met, we simply invent new needs, luxuries, status symbols, validations, to escape boredom, and still, at no point do we arrive at final and lasting satisfaction. The net result is a pervasive sense of inadequacy and restlessness. This is the silent war within, a tug-of-war between endless craving and the faint awareness that none of these things truly fulfill us. You might sense it as that inexplicable sadness or emptiness that surfaces even when everything is fine in your life. It's not that you've failed, it's that the game is rigged. Life under the tyranny of the will is like a treadmill with no stop button. Recognizing this can be disheartening, but it also sets the stage for a crucial insight. If we can't win at a game that's designed to produce discontent, maybe we need to stop playing by its rules. This is where Schopenhauer offers a surprising twist, a kind of solution that runs directly against the grain of our consumerist, always hopeful society. The trap of hope and the illusion of happiness. From childhood, many of us are taught a simple formula: work hard, do right, and eventually you'll find happiness. Hope is held up as a virtue, the light at the end of the tunnel that keeps us moving forward. But Schopenhauer issues a stark warning. What if this cherished hope is actually a trap? In his view, the conventional idea of happiness is a seductive mirage that keeps us running in circles. Why? Because hope fixes our gaze on the future, on the not yet, and convinces us that the present is just something to be endured until that better moment arrives. We say to ourselves, "I'll be happy when I graduate, when I get a better job, when I find the right partner, when I retire," always imagining a golden tomorrow. Yet by constantly looking to the future or reminiscing about a happier past, we effectively deny ourselves the present, which, as Schopenhauer dryly noted, is always inadequate. The cruel irony is that when the awaited future comes, it often fails to live up to our expectations. The relief or joy we hoped for doesn't last, or the achievement isn't as magical as we imagined. Schopenhauer writes that life is a continual deception. If it has promised, it does not keep its word, except to show how little the hoped-for thing was actually worth. We are deluded by hope during the pursuit, and equally deluded by the attained result, which never quite satisfies the longing we had. In this way, hope prolongs our suffering. It keeps us forever anticipating a salvation that never really comes, at least not in any permanent way. The moment we attain what we sought, a new horizon of if only opens up, and off we go again chasing another rainbow. It's like a tormenting carrot and stick routine we play on ourselves. Schopenhauer, often called the great pessimist, was brutally honest. Lasting happiness is an illusion. Any happiness we experience is generally just a brief pause in the cycle of want, a morsel of cheese in the trap. All happiness and gratification, he wrote, is negative in nature, meaning it's merely the removal of some desire or pain, not a positive enduring state. Once the pain is removed or the desire sated, the positive feeling subsides, and we're back to a neutral state, soon to be punctured by the next dissatisfaction. In contrast, pain and need are positive, pressing themselves on us and demanding action. What we call happiness is just the temporary absence of craving, a negative state that cannot hold for long. Modern happiness industries, self-help gurus, motivational coaches, endless life hacks often ignore this fundamental truth. They sell us the idea that with the right effort and attitude, we can reach a lasting fulfillment. But if Schopenhauer is right, that promise is not just false, it's dangerous. It sets us up to feel like failures for the very fact of being human, for inevitably falling back into dissatisfaction. The result is a kind of cultural guilt around suffering. Many people feel that if they are not happy, something must be wrong with them. In reality, Schopenhauer would say that nothing is wrong with you at all. Unhappiness is the normal state of human existence given the nature of the will. To be clear, this isn't to revel in misery, but to expose the false hope that keeps us on the treadmill. As one commentator put it succinctly, betting everything on some vague idea of future happiness isn't going to work, and chasing it just leads to burnout. Clinging to hopeful fantasies can actually intensify our torment, like trying to extinguish fire with gasoline. It keeps us from confronting reality as it is. So, if perpetual hope in worldly happiness is a dead end, where does that leave us? Should we just give up and sink into despair? Schopenhauer's answer is surprising. He doesn't tell us to wallow in misery or become cynical nihilists. Instead, he points toward a radical shift in attitude, a kind of inner liberation that comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting less. In essence, he suggests that the only winning move in the will's game is not to play. The path of renunciation, wanting less to gain freedom. If our constant wanting is the source of suffering, then the logical antidote is to stop wanting, or at least to greatly diminish our attachment to desires. Schopenhauer calls this denial of the will, and it's the heart of his prescription for escaping spiritual exhaustion. This is not about becoming a zombie or falling into apathy. It's a deliberate, courageous reversal of the usual way of living. Society screams at us to want more, to chase success, status, and pleasure without end. Schopenhauer quietly counters, true wisdom lies in wanting less. By this, he means we must learn to step outside the frenzy of endless desire, to interrupt the cycle of suffering at its root. How does one do this? Schopenhauer outlines a few interrelated paths, all challenging but deeply transformative. First, there is the path of aesthetic contemplation. When we are absorbed in genuinely beautiful or sublime experiences, art, music, nature, we can momentarily transcend our restless ego and become a will-less spectator of life. In those moments of listening to a moving symphony or watching a tranquil sunset, we cease grasping at the world and simply observe it. According to Schopenhauer, art has the unique power to lift us out of ourselves, providing a brief, temporary liberation from the suffering that results from enslavement to the will. You might recall times when you were so lost in a film, a novel, or a natural landscape that for a little while, your cravings and worries fell silent. That is the will-free state of aesthetic bliss, a taste of relief from the constant hunger of existence. The second path is cultivation of inner stillness and compassion, which we might liken to introspection or even meditative practice. This involves turning one's awareness inward and observing the arising of desires without automatically obeying them. Schopenhauer was influenced by Eastern philosophies, like Buddhism and Hindu Vedanta, that emphasize meditation, compassion for all beings, and the illusory nature of the individual self. He noticed that when we practice compassion or simply quiet our minds, we weaken the ego-driven will. By stepping off the treadmill of external rewards and instead seeking inner understanding, one can achieve a degree of calm detachment from the pulls of desire. Schopenhauer believed that our deeper consciousness can recognize the fundamental unity of all life, that the differences between self and others are superficial. This insight breeds empathy and also reduces the ego's insistence on its own cravings. In practical terms, practices like mindfulness, meditation, or solitary reflection can help an individual turn away from their own desiring, which Schopenhauer says is key to lasting peace. This is not escapism. On the contrary, it's a brave confrontation of the will on our own inner turf, observing its antics and choosing not to feed it every time. Finally, the most demanding path is what Schopenhauer calls asceticism, or renunciation of worldly pleasures and goals. This doesn't necessarily mean withdrawing to a cave or living in sackcloth, unless one feels called to extremes. But it does mean deliberately simplifying one's life and renouncing the constant pursuit of gratification. Historically, saints, monks, and mystics in many traditions embody this principle. They give up wealth, sensual pleasures, and even personal ambitions, not out of self-punishment but out of wisdom. They understand that true contentment comes from transcending the will, not indulging it. Schopenhauer admired such individuals greatly, pointing to Eastern monks and Christian ascetics as examples of those who succeeded in largely denying the will and finding serenity. In his view, salvation from suffering can only result from the total ascetic negation of the will to life. By weakening and eventually quieting the will's demands, a person can attain a profound freedom, a state in which the inner emptiness is filled not by worldly pleasure, but by a peaceful contentment in simply being. It's important to note that Schopenhauer is not suggesting we literally kill ourselves or suppress every impulse. In fact, he argued suicide doesn't solve the problem at all, since it's an act of the will and life will recur. Instead, he's advocating a kind of spiritual transcendence, living in the world but learning to let go of its obsessions. This might mean intentionally reducing your wants, practicing modesty and restraint, and shifting your focus from outer achievements to inner cultivation. It's about reversing our priorities, valuing tranquility over thrills, compassion over competition, and understanding over acquisition. By denying the will, we gradually reclaim our energy from the futile chase and break the chains of compulsive desire. As the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy summarizes, the goal of human life is to turn away from desire. Salvation can only be found in resignation. In modern terms, Schopenhauer is inviting us to opt out of the rat race, to stop defining our worth by the endless goals we pursue, and instead to discover the peace that comes with acceptance and detachment. This is not a flashy or easy path. It's often misunderstood and certainly not celebrated by mainstream culture. But he believed it is the only path that leads to authentic liberation from existential fatigue. Conclusion: opening your eyes, turning inward. Schopenhauer's message may sound stark, but it can also be strangely liberating. If you have felt spiritually drained by life, it might not be because you did something wrong. It may be because you followed all the conventional rules and they led you into a trap. The world told you to keep striving, keep achieving, keep accumulating, and you did, yet the promised peace never quite arrived. According to Schopenhauer, this isn't your personal failure. It's the inevitable result of living in a cycle designed to produce discontent. Suffering, he tells us, is not an aberration, but the default state of life, as long as we are driven by the will's endless wants. It's a harsh truth, but within it lies the seed of freedom. Once you truly see the pattern, you can begin to break free from it. Liberation starts with a shift in perspective. Rather than endlessly seeking more success, more pleasure, more validation, the Schopenhauerian approach invites you to seek less. This doesn't mean having no goals or pleasures at all, but it means no longer pinning your ultimate happiness on them. It's about finding moments to step back and observe life like a work of art, appreciating its beauty and irony without grabbing at it. Think of watching a play. If you can sit in the audience of your own existence for a while, without feeling compelled to seize every prop on stage, you experience a kind of calm insight. Schopenhauer suggests that true wisdom is learning to regard life as one contemplates a work of art, in silence, without the urge to possess it. When we stop frantically trying to squeeze lasting happiness out of transient things, we make room for a quieter form of contentment. This contentment is not giddy or triumphant. It's gentle, a lightness that comes from no longer being at the mercy of every desire. Perhaps the deep exhaustion you feel is actually an invitation, a signal that it's time to wake up from the unwinnable chase. It's the beginning of awareness. As the saying goes, only those who dare to look at life as it truly is can begin to free themselves from it. By facing the hard truth of the will and its ceaseless hunger, you've taken the first step off the pendulum. From here, you can choose a different path, one of lowered desires, inward exploration, and compassionate understanding of yourself and others. This path isn't about abandoning life, but about living it on your own terms, with eyes open. It leads to a kind of spiritual sobriety, a state where peace is not something you chase in the future, but something you cultivate in the present by letting go. In Schopenhauer's philosophy, the end of the story is not doom and gloom, it's a quiet liberation. When the will falls silent, even if only for moments at a time, you discover that the emptiness inside wasn't a pit to be filled at all, but a space where genuine peace can emerge. You become, in a sense, okay with life as it is, warts and all. The world may remain as noisy and demanding as ever, but it no longer owns you. And that, finally, is the relief that those who are spiritually drained have been longing for. Not a promise of perfect happiness, but the freedom to step off the wheel of never-ending want and to rest in the calm of acceptance. Schopenhauer opened our eyes to the truth of suffering. He also handed us the key to suffering's end, which has been echoed in wisdom traditions across time. Happiness begins where desire ends. You've just taken a journey into the shadowed corridors of the human condition. One few are willing to walk. If this exploration stirred something in you, it means you're beginning to see what others choose to ignore. At Neuromystique, we don't offer comfort, we offer clarity. We don't chase illusions, we dissect them. If you're tired of surface-level answers, if your mind craves depth, paradox, and the dark beauty of truth, you've found your space. Subscribe, reflect, return. This is only the beginning.